Welcome to what we're now going to call SauceCast. We're the Smith brothers. I'm Porter.
I'm Ryan.
And this is our story. We're going to get into the details from beginning of our sauce saga to today and what's happening today.
Sounds good. With this podcast, we're going to give a sweet outline of our experience and the different things that have happened. There's going to be a lot of points that we're not going to be able to go into all the detail, and those will be specific things that we'll hit later in podcasts of their own. But this will give a nice overview of our story. So for people who want to just kind of hear it from start to finish, and we'll go into as much detail as we can without talking too long, that's what this one's going to be. So yeah, the beginnings of the sauce. So we grew up in Eugene, Oregon. Our family did. Both Porter and I we are two of four siblings, and we grew up vegetarian for a long time. Our parents had us vegetarian, I don't even know how many years, maybe 10 years when we were kids. We are no longer vegetarian, but during that time, our mom was she was kind of in the food world. She worked as a chef at different places and was always introducing new vegetarian style items. Anyways, there was this company in Eugene that popped up while we lived there. And we lived in Eugene from, I don't even know what years. This was back when we were little, probably when I was in first grade all the way through when I graduated high school in 2003. But this company in Eugene, it was called Yum Sauce. And Yum Sauce was one of a kind. And it had this different flavor to it. And it had almonds in it, and it had chickpeas in it also, and some other ingredients. Anyways, very, very cool product at that time, and that company has grown. They opened a bunch of cafes, and I can't remember the last time I ate it, but it was really good. Anyways, we decided we're gonna replicate this product. And so I think our mom took a crack at it first, and it was not quite wasn't quite there. But my sister Star and I decided to kind of take that idea of replicating Yum Sauce and make a really good sauce from that. And that's when we came up with kind of the base of what we then perfected and launched into Bitchin Sauce. So the biggest difference was we didn't use any chickpeas in it, and
Sauce was probably cooked too, wasn't it?
They might have used like cooked almonds or something.
Yeah.
Well, I know the chickpeas were cooked, so I think it probably was cooked. But ours was different, raw almonds and things like that. And so we perfected that. I lived with my sister in Santa Barbara, where I was a Manny at that time. And we both decided to eat vegan, which didn't last long. But we made something that was a good start. It was better than what our mom made, and it was edible and still delicious. Then what happened after that is over the next 7 years, I really took that recipe and perfected that thing. So I made adjustments to the amounts of things that we were using and dialed it in to what was the sauce that we launched at our first farmers markets years ago in 2010 as Bitchin Sauce.
I remember in those years of dialing in the recipe, we were going through many different jobs, many different occupations.
Yeah.
trying to find a way to someday make it and be wealthy. And
Oh yeah.
I remember you over those years saying, man, we should sell the sauce. We could sell this sauce.
Yeah.
I could sell this sauce.
Yeah.
And it was over several years. It was probably after, our sales jobs dropped out.
Yep.
Man, we should just sell the sauce. Or after we get off the boats being deckhands
Yep.
on tuna boats, man, we should just sell this sauce.
Yep.
Like it was always circling around in conversation.
It was always there. It was something that I would make for friends and family. I had friends say, "This is really good. Like you need to do something with this. This is really good." And I think what we were, we did not grow up wealthy. We didn't really come from much in terms of the financial side of things. We did, we did have.
We were poor.
We were poor. Yeah. But we did.
Rich in other things, but
Yeah, we were
did
rich
not
in
have
other
a lot of
things.
money.
Yeah, that's true. But we were always great idea people. Like one thing I love about my dad is he always, he had big dreams of things he wanted to do, and it was just always these big ideas. And the interesting part about that, it was always like one day we're going to have this, this, and this. One day we're going to have this, this, and this. So it was always like a hope more, I think. We really kind of lacked in the implementation side of things of like, how do we actually take action and make this happen? I remember even one of my friend's dads saying like, you have these ideas, but like, what are you doing? And I didn't even
plan?
What's your plan? And I didn't even understand what he was saying at the time. But, when it came to the sauce, it was this idea and like, maybe we could do something with this. I wrote a business plan with one of our roommates, Mike Bresnan. I wrote a business plan with him. We were like, let's write a business plan and see if we can, sell this sauce and sell some rice and bean bowls with the sauce, like out of a truck. And so I priced it all out with him once. We never did anything, but I remember writing a business plan with him, with the product, and how it progressed was I was working at a place in Cardiff, California, and here in Southern California at New Balance shoes, and I was just a shoe salesman making, I think, $11 an hour selling shoes, and we called ourselves calf caressers. We would fit shoes. Yeah, a little massage, get the sale.
A higher experience than normal shoe shopping.
Yeah. So anyways, I was working there, and my sister at the time, she was working for a personal chef service. So she was working for some lady who had a personal chef service, and my sister was kind of the assistant. And she was like, you know what? We should start a personal chef service. And I was like, that sounds great. Let's do it. All I'm doing is surfing and selling shoes. Like, yeah, let's do that. And at that point, I was actually considering going into the Coast Guard. I was like, shoot, I just need to do something that's going to bring in
money.
steady money, something. I always had dreams of being married and having a family, and I'm looking at my situation. I'm going, this isn't going to cut it. And we didn't go to college. I didn't go to college. I kind of jumped into jobs right after and, just jumped from job to job. So anyways, when she brought that idea up, I was like, that sounds great. Let's do it. So we built a website. We called ourselves the Pie Smith. And, we quickly realized that in order to have a personal chef service, you need to have customers. And we're like, how are we going to get customers? And so our idea was, well, at least what was in reach, we were like, what if we make a bunch of our products, like vegan baked goods and gluten-free cookies and all these things, and bring them to a farmer's market and market our service at a farmer's market. People can try our stuff and market the service. And I was like, that sounds great. I want to make the sauce. Let's make the sauce and bring that too. So anyways, our first farmer's market, our sister, she really, I think she was up like baking all night. It was kind of a pain in the butt to bake all that stuff for our first farmer's market. I remember taking old signage that New Balance was throwing out, and we scrapped that together and, painted our own signs, and it was very, very like bootstrapped, put together, just like, you have people with not a lot of money just trying to make it happen. So
we have a photo of the first farmer's market with those signs.
We do, yeah.
And the pies and the cookies. We'll throw that up so everyone can see.
Yeah, so that was first farmer's market, I believe, was it wasn't San Marcos. It was somewhere around San Marcos. It was very small, very slow market. We made 8 jars of the product. And kind of to back up a bit, as we were like making this product, we're like, what the heck do we call this? I remember sitting around our island to give you an idea, we lived in a house with a bunch of roommates. I think my sister and her husband lived there. And then, it was just packed with roommates. So there was always people around and stuff happening, and our parents lived there. And so we're sitting around the island and we're like, what do we call this sauce? And we're thinking California sauce. And I think awesome sauce came up because that just sounds good. But we're like, I'm sure somebody's probably got that. And then the idea of Bitchin Sauce came up in that conversation of we should call it Bitchin Sauce. And we thought of it more of like the old school, like 60s or 70s, like, bitchin', like, oh, swell, that's kind of what it started as. And so we're like, oh, well, we need a logo. And so they snapped I think it was my sister or somebody snapped a photo of me making this bitchin' face, like make your best bitchin' face. So I made that face, and we tried to make our logo kind of that old school, more retro. That's why that logo has black. It's all black.
Did all that happen in just that moment?
Yes, we called it Bitchin' Sauce, and then we snapped a photo of.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was very. It was just it was thrown together. Little did we know, we did not know what we were doing. Although we did have warnings. Our mom was like, "You guys are shooting yourselves in the foot by calling it Bitchin' Sauce." I think that was a trigger for my mom with that name, which it was innocent. We're thinking bitchin' means awesome, That's a cool word. That's fun, And so
but it's a swear word.
Yeah, a swear word. The slang is good. Anyways,
that's probably why Mom didn't like it, because it was a little edgy.
Yeah, she thought we were shooting ourselves in the foot. So, anyways, fast forward to when Bitchin' Sauce was successful and we actually, employed our mom. She was like, this is so of God. It's amazing how things can change. Anyways, so we're at the farmer's market. We have these jars of sauce. We sold, I think, 4 of them to Star's mother-in-law. And the other 4 we actually ended up selling. They were big jars, too.
You only brought 8 sauces.
I think we brought 8 of them. But after that, we were like, we need to focus on the sauce only, because the sauce was easy to make. Everything else, I don't even know how much we sold of everything else. We just knew that it wasn't worth it. The juice was not worth the squeeze on those baked goods. So we're like, we're just going to focus on the sauce and only do the sauce. And so and we're going to go for other farmers markets and stuff. And so then we started expanding into the Leucadia Farmers Market and the Escondido Farmers Market and the North Park Farmers Market. And I remember sitting at these markets. I mean, we are a new product that no one's really tried this style of product down here unless they had not bitchin sauce, but yum sauce up in Oregon. Like no one's had anything like this. And I think this was kind of the genius of it was, if you went into the grocery store, it was only hummus or like dairy based dips like onion dip or like some ranch dip or whatever, but there wasn't any nut based dips in that section. And so it was, not only was it revolutionary there and the timing was really cool, but also at farmers markets, it took us a little while to get used to the name. And I kind of really headed up the farmers markets because Star had kids at the time. I didn't have any kids. I was single. So we were like, here, I'll go out and do farmers markets. You do more of the production side, the back end, the books, and be with your kids. I'll go out because I got nothing else to do, and I'll sell at the farmers market. So, because not having a spouse or kids at that time. So anyways, I remember sitting at some of these farmers markets and it just being crickets. And the turning point for me, I think, was we did the Escondido Farmers Market, and I think after we worked all the numbers, after we like paid off the product and paid for all the fees or whatever, the money left over, there was like $8 left over, and I got paid $8, and I was like, I'm gonna make it. This is gonna work. And so anyways, it started like that, and then we started hiring. I think our dad was driving a cab at the time, and we hired our dad and our mom. We moved into another house that was less expensive, and we were making this stuff out of our house. We did have a commissary that you're required to have, but we had an operation out of our house just to make it happen. And so that was about the time that we had hired our parents and we realized we want to expand more. That was when we called you, and you can talk about your
I was in Bend, Oregon, so I wasn't in Southern California. I had not seen much working in my job life, and after several business failures and job failures, my wife and I just took off for Hawaii. We were living in Hawaii on Maui for 3.5 or 4 years or something like that. And then we decided we want to have a family, but we didn't want to have a family out in Hawaii. So we moved back to the States, the mainland. Yeah. And I was working in the beer industry. I was working for Maui Brew Company, and I always wanted to go back into Oregon, and Bend, Oregon is like beer mecca. So at the time, that's where I wanted to set up roots for our family. So I moved to Bend and started working for 10 Barrel Brewing. And when they were very small, now they got bought out by Anheuser-Busch, and that's pretty awesome for my buddies. But we were set up in Bend. Now I'm in Bend and I'm working at a brewery, but I'm also going, I need to make plans for higher things in my life. I want to make more money too. So I started thinking, how could I use this brewery scene? And I wanted to build a brewery tour thing, but like a kind of a bendy style brewery tour thing. So I wanted to buy an H1 Humvee, and I found one in Iceland, and I got someone to go in on it with me, and I was about to buy this Humvee and convert it into a brewery tour, 4-wheel drive brewery tour, manly kind of thing. But I knew that you guys were, gaining traction with the sauce, and I thought that was really cool too. But you know, I was outside of it.
Yeah.
But then when you guys called me and said, "Hey, we want you to come be a part of this thing," I did not have my brewery thing up off the ground yet. It was very in the basic planning part of it. And I looked at my wife and I said, that would mean we have to move out of here. And I think she was actually kind of happy with that. She loves San Diego and she doesn't like cold places like Bend in the winter. So we took our newborn baby and we moved. We moved to Southern California and we moved in with you guys.
Yep.
And we call it the Shanty Mansion.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a very, well, how many, like 5-bedroom house or something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't an updated house. It was kind of rickety.
It was rickety and small for a 5-bedroom house.
And so we moved into a room.
Yep.
Us three. And my wife, my new baby, and I. And And then I remember setting up the system of how I am going to participate in Bitchin.
Yeah.
Now,
What was our arrangement?
the arrangement was that I would be an equal owner. And, you know, that is what my wife was interested in. I think she was ready to own something, or at least, you know, be in the ownership part of it. And yeah, to move from Bend down and move the new baby and everything we had going on up there, it would have to been an ownership position. It would not have been a employee position.
Yeah.
So I remember coming.
How much did you buy in for? Because they're like, you should put in some money. I mean, my sister and I had it built to a certain point at that time. I don't know what the financial point was, but it was enough to support some employees. And we were like, you should buy in for, I forget.
You guys were, yeah. It was a combo deal. I had to buy in with some money. I only had about $2,500 that my wife had just got actually from it was the will of her dad that had recently passed away. And so he left her, I think a little bit more than $2,500, but we took $2,500 and we gave it to Bitchin Sauce to buy in.
Yep.
For a 1/3 ownership.
Yep.
And I also had to, it would materialize, the full ownership position would materialize when I did the sweat equity to bring everybody up to a certain revenue, basically. Or you were making $1,500 a week. I believe that's
Personally?
what it was.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to make less than that.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
I had to, for me to share in the ownership pool of money,
revenue,
I had to do the sweat equity and open up new farmers markets, work farmers markets, and I did all the crappy ones, the where you drive an hour to sit at a cold, dark booth and no one shows up, and then you drive an hour back. So I've done that, and then I did that, and then we built it up to where you guys wouldn't take a hit.
Yep.
And then there was full sharing of the ownership pool, and away we go.
Yeah. When did we hit that? How long did that take? Actually.
I think it went actually pretty quick because
Yeah.
I was serious about it.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe like a 2 or 3 month process.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is as a family getting into business, you know, I remember talking to a business coach, just kind of like on an initial call that actually really helped my mind, like conceptualize what we had and where we were going. because I always, my mind was limited based off of, well, what have other people done, and I'm going to compare against what other people have done, and that's going to tell me what I'm capable of doing, and this business coach was like, dude, like, can I coach you for a second? Like, it's not about what other people have done. Like, why don't you come up with the dream of what you want and work backwards and then see if you can pull that off with what you're doing. And that kind of opened up my thinking to not be so limited to, oh, well, these guys are doing this, these guys are doing that, So that was amazing. But also on that same call, he was like, do you guys have any agreements in place or anything like that? I was on the phone with my sister. She was on that same call, and she was, I remember saying, like, we're best friends. Like, agreements, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, we're best friends. And
He was talking about shareholders agreement or any
he,
type of
operation agreement, shareholders agreement, any of that
corporate
stuff.
bylaws, things
Sure.
like that.
Yeah. And we didn't have any of that stuff in place. We were just, a family that got into business, doing business, and we're like, wow, this is really succeeding. And one cool part about that, and really the story of Bitchin Sauce and where it started, was we were a family that came together, came from nothing, and launched this product, and it started picking up steam in San Diego, and just doing really well. And we were, people knew our family. They knew our parents. Our parents worked farmers markets. They knew us. They got to see us every week. And it was just a really cool, example to people. Like, people really admired, whether it was a vendor at the farmers market or a customer. They're like, wow, this is amazing, seeing a family come together like this and pull this off. And so that was a very cool aspect that I loved about Bitchin Sauce. As we grew, we grew that. I think we grew it to like 26 markets a week. We ended up doing $1 million in revenue just through farmers markets. We had a whole production team that was working, and a market team. And
Let's talk about the production team real quick, because this is all family that we didn't bring in any outside. I mean, there was maybe a friend.
Friends.
A friend would come to a farmer's market or, help with production. But it was basically, us three siblings as owners. And then there was a crew of people that were manufacturing.
Yep.
And some of those manufacturing would go out and do farmers markets.
Yep.
Also. But it was mainly family.
Yep. Oh, I think in light of like other people who were involved, one key point to note is when we started out, it was my sister and I who started out, and her husband, who he was pursuing music and trying to get his music career off the ground. He was around during that time, and I remember the conversation with my sister and him going, hey, like, do you want to be a part of this? Like, do you want to be an owner? Because he was there at the start of this thing. And
he was offered it before I was offered it.
He was offered, yeah, this is at the very, very beginning. I think after we did our first, or maybe it could have been before our first farmers market or after, but we asked him, like, hey, like, at what capacity do you want to be involved in this? Like, you can have ownership in this too. And he actually denied the ownership, and he was like, I'm just happy, helping out, and then, I'm going to pursue music and whatever else. That kept him free to do that, and not like, bound to the Bitchin Sauce company. But I do remember that he refused the ownership and just was going to work as an employee and help out. So in light of, as our team built, it was a few friends here and there, but mostly family, including our wives. So eventually our wives came in, and
my wife was a part of production.
Yeah, your wife was a part of production. I believe my wife was a part of production. I did get married, I think in 2012 was when I got married. And my wife joined in production also, helping out before kids. And so we had our spouses, we had cousins, we had, brothers-in-law, we had a whole crew.
Yeah, and our sister's husband, his name's Luke. So Luke ended up kind of settling into the position of lead manufacturer. Like he would do all the blends, and he would, basically batches would show up of spices and things like that. He would do the blending and send it on for the packing part of it.
Yep.
And as the production grew, his responsibility in the kitchen grew. But I maybe saw him at one farmer's market when I was doing farmer's markets out there. I know that when I left for a vacation, he filled in and did some farmer's markets too. But he was mainly in the kitchen.
Yeah, production.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting because there were some interesting dynamics with our spouses working for the company, and there were some interesting mindsets with our spouses working for the company too, which I think we should talk about some of those interesting mindsets, because when my wife and I had our first baby, my wife was like, I'm done working. Like, I'm not going to work anymore. And I don't know what set it off, but I know that there was a problem with our spouses not wanting to work. And you're a little clear on that one.
Yeah.
What was that? What was the issue?
Well, this is from my perspective of what was going on, but Star and Luke had a couple children at this point, and we had built out a room in our facility to be kind of like a daycare to our children. And Star and Luke were so involved with the company, Star being a 1/3 owner and Luke being the kitchen lead, that and we weren't making so much money that we could just hire in daycare. So we would bring our kids into this room, and it was like a dungeon almost. I mean,
it was a room with a TV and beanbags.
Yeah, it was comfortable, but not ideal for every spouse.
No. My spouse definitely had different standards for our kids.
Yeah, and my family, we were borderline. We were, it's okay to hang out in here maybe a couple days a week, but limited, and we're gonna not bring our kids every single day. So there was, the personal preferences of each family were different.
Yeah.
And so in order to have a child not be at work, you either have to hire daycare, or you have to,
or your spouse has to,
or you have to not come in.
work.
You're not working.
Yeah.
So, there was a little split off there, going in 3 different directions on how to properly take care of our children. But what was very interesting is that with Luke and Star being so involved in the company, and our spouses either not there at all or barely there was a movement to regroup and bring all the spouses in to share in the responsibility of the building of this company. Mm-hmm. And so there were some meetings where it's kind of like a reverse firing, where
we're forcing you to work.
Yeah, you're forced. You have to come in for this to be equal, for this to be equitable.
But wasn't Luke getting paid? Isn't that like normal?
It's normal.
Like, if you're working and you're getting paid to work, I don't see the issue.
The issue, in my opinion, in their mind, is that the ownership went outside of just the 3 siblings. It went into
sucked into the spouses.
Now Luke, remember, is a musician, and I'm sure would love to pursue his music instead of having to work in a kitchen as the lead kitchen guy.
I mean, you
And
didn't have to.
well, I didn't require him to.
I didn't either.
So, I mean, read between the lines there. Why did he feel like he had to? And then why was that mindset required? You know, the participation was required of my spouse and of yours. And that was just an interesting time. Now we sorted through some stuff. Your wife actually never came back.
No.
But mine did. Mine came back in and, and helped out. But that was weird. That's not normal business. And I wouldn't even say that's normal family business. That is just, I think, in my personal opinion, there was things starting in that relationship where, with my sister and her husband, where they were they were almost requiring them to stay, even though they had bigger dreams. So I think there's fertile soil for some discontentment.
Sure. Yeah.
And it fruited out like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. Well, jumping out of that, is there any more that we want to talk about with?
We'll talk more about that
people?
with
Yeah,
in another.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about. But
Jumping, so there's some other interesting, this is kind of like what happened next or during this period of time is interesting, and I'm going to mention it and we'll probably talk about it later, is during this time, I have an aunt Mary, we called her Aunt Bunny, and she had some health issues or some dietary restrictions or whatever, and so she was like, hey, can I have the recipe for the sauce for personal use? Mm-hmm. And so I trusted my aunt to steward that, and so we were like, you know what, sure, like, here you go, you can make this for yourself, personal use, whatever. And so anyways, I know that I think it was during, they went through a rough time, 2008, I don't know how much they lost. They might have lost everything. I don't know. But, that put them in a position where we got, I don't know if it was a call from them or an email or what, but they said, hey, we want to start a sauce company also. Can we come and check out what you're doing? And so we were like, sure, why don't you come down, check it out? So they actually came down to Southern California, checked out our operation and what we were doing. We sat down with my Uncle Pat and Aunt Mary and, kind of talked about what their plans were. And their plans were to open up a food truck in San Luis Obispo, and make a sauce, but they assured us this isn't the same sauce. They had adjusted the sauce because my Aunt Mary couldn't have oil or nuts. I think it was something like that.
I think it was oil.
She couldn't have oil, so they were making like an oil-free, and I think they added beans to it also, an oil-free, it had beans sauce that they were going to, I think they were going to do a few farmers markets, but it was the view to open up a food truck and sell food out of a food truck, and that was going to be their business. And we were like, well, that's cool. We were like, well, why don't you just join what we're doing? Why don't we make sauce? Why don't we ship it up to San Luis Obispo? It's not that far. And you guys can open up farmers markets and just under the Bitchin brand, sell the product. And, we can build a business together and you guys can be like, have your own kind of like contractor. I don't even know how we were going to set it up, but more like,
it's more like instead of, recreating this whole thing, just like we're going to be in San Luis Obispo too one day. Why don't you just help us get there? And join us.
Yeah. And so my Uncle Pat, he said he ran the numbers and he was like, no, we're going to do our own thing. I don't want to do that. And so we're like, all right, that's fine.
He wanted something to be able to will to his children too.
Oh,
that's what he said.
Is that what he said? Yeah, I think I could probably even dig up the email. I got it somewhere. Anyways, So I'm working at a farmer's market. This is maybe a few months after they've started, and I had I had a customer come through my line and try my product, and he's like, or it was he or she. They were like, "Wow, this is really good. I've actually had something similar to this up in San Luis Obispo. This tastes just like it." And in my mind, I'm thinking, there's no way that you can make my sauce without oil and with beans and make it taste the same. There's just no way. And that was my first inkling that some shady business was going on. And so I, me along with my sister and everybody, we reached out to my Uncle Pat and we're like, hey, what's the deal? You know, we have customers down here saying that your product tastes exactly like ours. And my Uncle Pat was like, yeah, we couldn't, the shelf life or something without oil and without the beans. And so we found out that they were using our recipe that I gave for personal use only. And they were building their own business out of it and calling it like Infinitely Awesome Sauce. And so that was the first kind of shady business that we came across, and we addressed it with them. We said, you need to stop doing this immediately. And they would not. And they decided to continue, and ultimately that venture failed. But that was the first sauce wars within family that occurred.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
that family would,
Yeah.
you know, do something like
Well,
that.
and then, after that, I mean, there was probably a dozen other companies that tried to recreate what we had done with Bitchin. And, from our own aunt and uncle to, some people who tried it at a farmer's market and then, tried to make their own for a farmer's market that we weren't in, or tried to get into stores before we could get into stores.
Yeah.
I forget what that one was called. Amygdala or something like that.
Yeah, I remember those guys. There were some guys across from us who used to make tea.
Yeah.
And they were right across from us. So they saw just the crowds coming and
in the
getting
farmer's
Bitchin
market,
Sauce.
yeah.
And so they were like, oh, we're going to do our own.
Yeah.
And so they tried to recreate. Yeah. That
And-
one failed too.
So from, Trader Joe's.
Yeah, Trader Joe's copied it.
Trader Joe's has a version that, it's nothing like what we make.
That's true.
And, but yeah, there's probably a dozen companies that try to do it. Very famous hummus companies tried to do it.
Hope Hummus came up with a nut-based line.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was wild.
Yeah. I mean, it's Uncle Pat called it lightning in the bottle, and that's why he wanted it too. But, I'd rather not compete with my own family. And I have the dream to take this Bitchin Sauce nationwide.
Yeah.
I want it in a squeeze bottle on tables like ketchup. I want it to be as famous as ketchup.
Yeah.
In my mind. So thinking like, oh yeah, you do your thing over here in San Luis Obispo, and we'll do our thing here. And
Yeah,
like
that was-
yeah, the
was
the
a-
vision was too big to. I don't want to compete with my family. I don't.
Yeah.
I'd rather just let's join together and let's do this.
Absolutely.
But we started growing and growing outside of farmers markets. We actually decided to do our own deliveries to stores because we weren't big enough to get into main national distributors.
Was it because we weren't big enough, or was it because we didn't know what we were doing? I think it was because we just didn't know what we were doing. It was all new.
No,
and back in the day,
I don't think
I mean, we had already started like some local stores, so there were some local smaller chains that picked up our product, and so we were doing our own deliveries down here. And I think it came down to the money side of things.
we weren't big enough revenue wise to sustain what we had built.
We wanted that margin,
And we wanted the margin to go to us
instead of to a distributor.
That's
right.
And I had come from, I was mentioning all my many jobs. One of my jobs was delivering waffles and waffle irons to San Diego.
Yeah.
I was the waffle man of San Diego for like 8 months, but I learned
distribution.
Yeah, I learned how to be a delivery guy and what it takes and the systems you have to have in place and all that. So we bought a refrigerated truck. Brought a refrigerated truck transit.
It's not how it started. It was in the back of our own trucks.
In coolers. It was in coolers to start. Oh, that's right.
That's what we did. Yeah, for a long time, we got into Southern California Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And at that time, you could self-distribute. And so we were like, all right, well, we're going to distribute to all these stores. And so we drove, I don't even know how many days a week. Maybe it was 2 days a week, 2 different routes, hitting all the way up to LA stores. Those delivery days were gnarly days. That was a 3 o'clock wake up.
And you had to make temperature because they would come out with their little temp guns.
They would temp it.
And you hoped that the ice packs or the gel packs in your cooler just stayed cold the whole time. And sometimes it was borderline and they still took it because we had just driven from San Diego. But to solve that problem, we bought a refrigerated transit, had it custom built. And we did our own deliveries for a while. And actually that was very valuable to our company to learn about, how our product did in stores. And
totally. Yeah, that was invaluable, if that's a word. That was the learning from that was awesome.
Yeah.
Invaluable?
More than valuable.
More than valuable?
The invaluable.
Yeah, but because in stores, anything can happen. It is. Yeah. Your product's not on the shelf. It's sitting in the back. It's hidden. It's buried.
But the type of sacrifice that we had to go through to find that out,
dude, that was insane.
That was
probably farmers markets were easy compared to deliveries.
Yeah,
those delivery days I did not look forward to.
And we would combine deliveries with demos, and I know this is crazy.
This is insane too. This is insane.
We'd be like, okay, I'm driving to LA. I'm gonna drop off a guy at the first delivery of the day, drop another guy off at the second delivery to do in-store demos, and then I'm gonna go do my route of deliveries, and then I'm going to pick up that guy, the second guy I dropped off, and then I'm going to go pick up the other guy. And by the end of the day, this is probably like a 10 to 12 hour day for the first guy that got dropped off. He's done his demo. He sold out.
He's been there for hours.
And he's at the bar inside of Whole Foods, and he's 3 sheets. And we got in trouble because of how long we were leaving people there and what they were doing.
Oh my gosh.
But no, we tried to be as efficient as possible in every move that we make. And we wouldn't do it the same way today.
I wouldn't do it the same. Good learning, knowing what I know. I wouldn't do that again. Yeah. What I was going to say, oh man, I had a really good point with those deliveries. I had a good.
We can come back to it.
I can't.
So, doing deliveries, we were like, no, we can't do this anymore. When can we flip the switch and not have to do deliveries anymore?
Yeah.
And have a distributor, which is what normal people in our world, our company,
at least the size we were at that time.
Yeah.
They would have.
Let's just get someone to deliver for us. So then we set up some more established natural foods deliveries, and that was awesome. We started getting some time back when that happened.
Yeah, that was way awesome. We had time to be with our families.
Yeah.
And that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were trying to wean ourselves out of a lot of farmers markets because we had to do deliveries. But then when we had
And the weekend farmers markets.
the weekend farmers markets, yeah, so that was really good. We had Whole Foods Southern California. I think what was the next batch of stores we launched? We launched Whole Foods in the Bay Area. Did we get that, or was it Colorado?
It was Colorado.
Oh, it was Colorado first.
First.
Yeah, so we got the Colorado area of Whole Foods next, and you know that was also like what we had to do. How our product sold was by demoing our product.
Yeah, no one had ever
going into
had it before.
stores and demoing the product. And so what we did is we moved our families out there. Were we there for? Was it a 3-month period?
Yeah,
Because
and
there was
we
like we did
switched.
family.
Yeah.
So we rented a small condo there, and so one family would go out and would open up all the stores, make sure everything was going well, do a round of demos, and I forget how long we were there for, and then we would flip flop.
Yeah.
And then your family was out there. I even think Star's family was out there. Were they out there?
I don't think they went out there.
Oh.
No, it was I went out there, and I think it was a 3-month amount of time, and for the first 6 weeks it was me doing demos instead of like leaving our families in San Diego for 6 weeks.
Yeah, we brought the
them with-
families.
we're like, let's do this. We'll just move everybody out there and really invest in that area.
Yeah.
And we just did so many demos.
And it worked.
We crushed it.
Yeah.
And then halfway through that 3-month period is when we switched. You came out and we had maybe like a day or two of both being
Overlap.
of overlap. And then you took over and I went back to San Diego. But it was a 3-month
Yep.
in the trenches in Whole Foods in
We had our cousin Gus
Colorado.
fly out.
Yeah. Cousin Gus
Cousin Gus was there.
was
He was the man.
yeah, he was doing it with us. And that was great. And then we opened up Bay Area.
Yep.
And in Bay Area, it was a little
Bay
bit
Area Whole
closer.
Foods.
It was Bay Area Whole Foods. It was a little bit closer than the 24-hour drive to, get to Denver. So what we decided to do with only a 7-hour drive to the Bay Area is that we would just go up for like 2 weeks and then we would come back home. And
Yep.
go up for 2 weeks and come back home. And I remember doing that in the Bay Area for at least a year. And we stayed with family.
Did we do that? We had the Bay Area for a year where we were going up for 2 weeks and coming back home?
Yeah.
Are you sure it was that long?
I'm pretty sure it was that long. I mean, maybe it's a whirl, but I remember going up.
I do remember going up for
Probably
2
like
weeks.
3 or 4 2-week slots.
Were you staying with family up there?
I was staying with family. I remember sleeping in my truck in neighborhoods. I remember, bouncing around different family and friends.
Oh yeah, different family and friends.
Yeah.
That's right.
And, but it was only 2-week blocks. So that was still really hard to be away from your new babies, which we were still having new children. And our families were very young.
Yeah.
And then we would go back home and
Dang.
we did it together.
Yeah.
Sometimes I did it alone. Sometimes
Yeah.
I took, Joel, my wife's brother, I took him up and we did it together. It was,
Dang.
but it was unsustainable.
Yeah.
To say the least.
That's the truth. And during that time, so at the same time, kind of around the same time we launched Bay Area, we were in talks with Costco at that same time, and we got that Costco deal. I think, did we get it, or they had? I think they had said, like, I think we were just in some final negotiation things. It was like a done deal.
Yeah, we had
it was
a
just
meeting with the buyer in San Diego.
Yeah.
And secretly they're freaking out because of how insane this product is.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
we had not done a Costco deal before, so we had to learn how to do a Costco deal.
Yeah.
And we were going through that process.
Yeah, we were going through that process. I remember getting our facility ready for the audits, and everything was moving that right direction. Which at this point we are, as far as like the size of our company, maybe we were around 2 million at this point. I think we were around 2 million. We were looking, I think we even hired another company that was really close to us because we had our own facility, way before this, about probably after we started Bitchin Sauce, we had our own facility maybe a year in, I'm not exactly sure, but we opened up our own. But at this point, with Costco in the works and all these Whole Foods, we had... I think it was Kai's Kitchen that we wanted them to come in.
They
and
were
do
our
some
neighbors.
Yeah, they
and
were.
They
our neighbors.
manufactured food.
Yeah, so we were like, maybe they can manufacture our stuff and help us grow.
Yeah.
So I remember that.
We brought them in, and they had a team come in.
Yeah.
Under Luke, the kitchen head.
Yeah.
And they were doing all the manufacturing and kind of. There were still some family members sprinkled in there, but they mostly replaced the manufacturing of our company.
Yeah. I remember the point that I was going to make earlier. What's interesting about the deliveries when we were doing deliveries and our product just in general is it had a hard, like 1 month shelf life. So imagine managing product from making to actually delivering it to a store and it having the time to sell through within a month for somebody to have enough time to actually eat that product. I think that was another reason why we were doing our own deliveries, is because that 1 month shelf life was
we had to manage it
gnarly.
better.
We had to manage it super tight. That was wild.
I remember, so Kai's comes in, and I think this is probably the last part of the first part of this story. We'll tell the second half of this story, which is when it gets really juicy.
Yeah.
But
Saucy.
I remember when Kai's came in, we had set up a different way, or we had set up profit sharing. So anybody who was involved from the beginning and had stuck through working for Bitchin Sauce in this period of time, with this very foundational period of time, was going to participate in a new program called profit sharing. And in profit sharing, I might need to look at the documents, but I think it was 2% of the profits are awarded to these individuals. And it was mostly family, or like, not immediate family, but extended family.
Were our spouses involved in that?
Our spouses are involved. There's some spouses' siblings that are involved. Parents are involved. Our youngest brother Casey is involved. I think it kind of ended there. But it was widely understood that profit sharing was going to happen when we got profits. Now, we were also growing, and a lot of our profits had to be reinvested into the growth of the company, which everyone understood. Okay, that's fine. I'm more interested in the profits of a huge company.
Totally.
But I remember the conversations like, when are we gonna see this 2%, or when are we gonna see this profit sharing? It's not 2% exactly, but when are we gonna see it? When are we gonna see it? And there was discussions and murmurings.
But so at this point, like, to clarify some of the profit sharing, some of these people were not actively working for Bitchin Sauce at this time. Like, our spouses at this time, when we talked about profit sharing and them participating in the profit sharing, like they were going to get it, they were not actively participating in Bitchin Sauce. And did anybody else leave at that point who was participating in profit sharing? Maybe Joel.
Joel left.
Joel had left. So there were some people who weren't working for Bitchin Sauce at the time, but it had nothing to do with working at the time. It was the core group of people who started it.
Yeah, who
got you.
Established Bitchin Sauce.
Yeah.
We wanted to.
So you didn't have essentially
them.
we were like, we're going to reward you. You don't have to work for Bitchin.
This next section I don't have documentation of, but you and I were there when this happened, and to the best of my recollection, I'm going to give details on it. What happened was Kai's comes in and starts doing the manufacturing.
Yep.
Luke is still in the position of kitchen lead, and I think there was Luke's brother or Luke's sisters were part of manufacturing also. But when Kai's came in, the pay for manufacturing switched over to a per unit pay.
Yeah, from like hourly to per unit.
From hourly to per unit.
Why did we do that?
Because Kai's was doing...
Oh, because Kai's was doing the work.
The manufacturing.
And we still wanted our people to be paid based off of the volume of what was happening.
Yeah. I mean, and things were growing and we were making a lot more sauce. From my recollection, it was like 7 cents a sauce or something like that that was made that our crew would get. And then I even think Luke being the head, had a few more cents added on to his per unit cost. Anyway, this is set up outside of you and me.
I think it was run by us. Like, hey, we're gonna switch the amounts to a per unit thing, and I think it was like, oh yeah, that sounds good. We wanted people to make money and all that stuff. I don't remember. What we didn't do was we didn't go over each person and actually calculate out what that was going to be per person. I don't remember doing that.
I don't have any documents on this.
Yeah.
So if I did, I would look them up and tell you specifics.
Yeah.
But we were just left out of this part. And maybe in passing, like, hey, we're going to go to per unit.
I mean,
pay.
I remember being
okay.
I remember that.
Sure. But we didn't pick amounts and we didn't actually divvy up what was what in the facility. But
we didn't do that.
What we learned is that Luke was getting double paid. And in fact, you could say triple paid, because he was getting extra off of the per unit for being the lead, which, great, that's awesome. But another position was created for the cleaning crew. The cleaning crew had to get...
Yeah, I think this was the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Was like there was a large amount allocated to the cleaning crew. Yeah. That was it. There was a large amount that was allocated
it was a per unit
to the cleaning crew. I forget if it was per unit or if it was previously decided amount. But I think what I remember and I recall was that, cleaning was a large job and it was going to take, it was like a full-time position to clean up after the productions. But what ended up happening was cleaning was not a large job, and it was a very small, like not much time being spent at all with cleaning, not compared to what was communicated to us. And that large amount of money was still attached to that, which didn't make sense.
Yes, and Luke took the cleaning role on for himself.
Yeah,
and how this
that's right. I do remember that.
Yeah, And how it was discovered was just in a meeting. And I remember sitting in a meeting going like, okay, so we're doing per unit, like how many units, just a quick audit of the system for my brain, how many units did we make today? And, it was said, and I was like, okay, so that would mean, okay, Luke's getting paid this, these other people are getting paid this, how much was Luke paid, like, in total? And I might have asked for in total of that day or in total for the week or whatever, but the answer was astounding.
Yeah.
And Luke was getting paid as much as the ownership was getting paid.
Yeah.
And
I think what we found out during that time was that's when we asked, like, okay, cleaning's taking place. How much time is someone being spent on cleaning or is someone working on cleaning? And it was like, I don't know, it was like an hour or an hour and a half or just something so small compared to the money that was reserved for that. And so it was this massive amount of money being paid for like little work.
And there you could nitpick details. I don't have the details to nitpick, but I do know this, that I said that this is insane. The amount made for that position is, I'm going to use the word fraudulent, or you could use the word embezzled. Now, that's my opinion in the matter, because if it wasn't paid,
unless you want to justify like spending an hour and a half cleaning some dishes and getting paid $100 an hour or whatever to do that. Unless you want to justify that. But
well, what I recognized,
it was way out of whack and way out of balance.
Yes.
And we didn't know that this was happening. Yes. And we had just found out that this was happening. And it stood out as, wait a second, how did this even get passed? How is this even approved? How is this even happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They knew
it was happening.
They knew it was happening.
We didn't.
My sister was cutting the checks, and
they knew it was happening. We didn't know it was happening, and it was out of balance based off of everything else we were doing.
Sure. And my reason for taking a stand against it is that this profit sharing program is set up for all these other people, and what I felt like is it was skimming the surface, like siphoning profits under the guise of this position that
the position that we thought existed didn't exist.
and
not in the way we thought it was.
Strategically taking from other members of the core group, which, with the rest of the stories details that we're about to get into in this next podcast, like, you can almost look back and reverse engineer what was going on at that time.
Yeah.
But that's where we'll end this podcast. Definitely stay tuned. It's about to get juicy.
Coming up is the breakdown moments of what happened with family splits, the crazy things that happened, and then the choices and new businesses and things thereafter, that we were just launched into this epic adventure.
Coming just these tiny little red flags, reverse firings of our spouses, like, you have to come work for this to be fair, and then this money skimming, which I said, you got 2 weeks to change this. Go ahead and change this. because this is like out of balance, out of whack.
Yeah.
They changed it the next day.
Yeah.
So red flags turn into layers, layers and layers. And we just, in this next podcast, we're going to
Break it down.
Well, we're going to go through every layer.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
More to come.